I told them twice. Once in writing, once standing right there beside the sign that says 5-ton limit. But the HOA didn't listen. They never do. Not until gravity gives the final word. That morning started quiet, same as most on the river. Sun coming up behind the sycamores, mist lifting off the current, coffee steaming in my hand. From my porch, I could see my bridge, narrow, solid, built with my own hands and a county permit older than half the people across that water. It wasn't big, but it was honest. And it had never failed me once. Then I heard it, that deep, throaty growl of a diesel engine straining too hard. Not a pickup, not a tractor, heavier. I set my cup down and walked toward the bank. By the time I cleared the tree line, I saw it, a full-size cement truck rolling onto my bridge, bright white cab, spinning drum, the word Evergreen painted down the side, the same HOA that had been pestering me for weeks. And standing on the near end of the bridge, arms crossed, was Karen Wallace herself, in her blazer and sunglasses, waving that driver forward like she owned the place. I shouted, but the sound of the truck drowned everything out. The bridge groaned, that long, low warning sound that only steel makes when it's had enough. Then came the crack. One beam gave, then another. The whole center section folded like paper. The cement truck tilted, slid, and disappeared into the brown water with a splash that shook the ground beneath my boots. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then bubbles, smoke, and Karen screaming into her phone. I didn't move. I just stood there watching the water swirl, the broken rails sticking up like ribs. Part of me wanted to yell, to curse, to tell her this was exactly what I warned them about. But I didn't. Because I already knew how this story started. It started weeks ago, when the HOA decided their deadlines were more important than physics. And that my bridge was just another obstacle in their way. That bridge was more than lumber and bolts to me. It was the line that marked where my world ended and theirs began. On one side, quiet river grass, the smell of pine, my workshop, and 40 acres of peace. On the other, asphalt, yard signs, and the never-ending hum of lawnmowers from Evergreen Meadows HOA. I'd built the bridge 15 years ago, back when the county still let a man do his own engineering if he knew what he was doing. And I did. 30 years as a civil engineer, I'd designed culverts, retaining walls, and even the small bridge on County Road 9. This one? This one was personal. I poured every bit of know-how and stubborn pride into it, treated oak decking, 10-inch I-beams, galvanized bolts, strong enough for my truck, my tractor, or the feed hauler that came twice a month. But not for commercial loads, never for that. I hung the sign myself, 5-ton limit, county approved. Not for decoration, not for show. Because when you live by a river, you learn to respect weight. Every pound that crosses a bridge has to be paid for by something, usually steel, sometimes luck. For years, no one questioned it. The folks across the water were quiet, decent people, retirees mostly. They waved when they drove by, left me to my chores, but then Evergreen got new management, the kind that believes control is the same as progress. Karen Wallace moved in 3 summers ago, and the piece ended about 3 weeks later. She came from Dallas, rumor said, where she ran a luxury development committee, the kind who wears sunglasses even in the shade, always walking fast, always talking like she's signing laws. At first it was small things, letters about community upkeep, complaints that my barn light was visible from across the river, or that my tractor created noise pollution. I laughed them off. My land wasn't in the HOA, never had been, never would be. But people like Karen don't stop where the map ends. When Evergreen decided to expand their clubhouse, a shiny new building with glass walls and an Olympic pool, she came knocking. I remember her standing on my porch, all perfume and confidence, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Redding," she said, smiling too wide, "our contractor found your bridge to be the most efficient access point for hauling concrete and materials. It's a short route, and frankly, it benefits everyone." I looked at her, then at the river, then back at her car, parked half crooked on my gravel. "It's not an access point," I said. "It's my bridge, and 5 tons is all it'll take." She laughed, that polite, practiced laugh of someone who has never been told no. "Oh, I'm sure it's sturdier than that." "You can be sure," I told her, "but physics doesn't care." That should have been the end of it, But with people like her, no just means try again louder. A week later, she sent an email marked urgent. Temporary construction access requested for community improvement. Will cover any minor wear. It sounded so polite you could almost miss the threat underneath it. I replied with one line, access denied, bridge not rated for heavy equipment, use county road. That was 2 weeks before the collapse. 2 weeks before a woman who couldn't read a weight sign decided she was smarter than steel. A week after that email, I started seeing tire marks I didn't recognize. Wide ones. Too wide for my pickup, too deep for my tractor. Fresh tracks cut into the soft dirt leading down toward the bridge, then stopping halfway across like someone had second thoughts. Someone had been testing it. I set up a camera on a cedar post that afternoon, old security unit from my barn, motion activated, powered by a solar panel. If they wanted to play sneaky, I'd play quiet. 3 days later, I got the proof. At 7:42 a.m., a white flatbed with the Evergreen HOA logo rolled halfway across my bridge. The driver stopped, looked around, then backed out fast. Maybe he saw the sign, maybe he heard the timbers creak. Either way, he knew he didn't belong there. I downloaded the footage, printed stills, and sent them straight to the HOA office with a note that said, unauthorized crossing. Next time it's trespass. Weight limit stands. This bridge is private. 2 hours later, my phone rang. Karen Wallace. Mr. Redding, we received your message. There's no need for threats. Her tone was sugar wrapped around a blade. Not a threat, I said. A statement of fact. You're being unreasonable. We're talking about a few construction deliveries. The county route adds 6 miles. Our trucks are wasting time and fuel. That's not my problem. This is a community project, Mr. Redding. You live here too. No, I told her. I live next to you. That's the difference. She went quiet for a beat, then sighed. That kind of theatrical exhale people use when they think they're dealing with a child. You'll regret making this difficult. I hung up. That evening, I added another camera under the bridge facing the trusses. Next morning, one of the warning signs was gone. Post snapped clean at the base. I found it half buried in the weeds downstream. So, I called the sheriff's office. Deputy Rhodes came out, looked over the scene, and wrote up a report, though he couldn't hide his smirk. You and the HOA again, huh? Seems they're running out of sense. Or they've got too much money, he said, jotting notes. I'll file it. Not much else we can do unless you catch 'em in the act. Oh, I will, I said. Don't worry about that. By the end of that week, the bridge felt like a front line. I added a heavy chain across the entrance, padlocked on both sides. I even welded a steel post in the center, removable, but not without tools. The sign went back up, larger this time, red letters clear as daylight. Private bridge, 5-ton limit. Trespassers will be reported. 2 days later, I found footprints in the mud near the post. Heels, expensive ones, and a cigarette butt beside them. Chanel blue. That night, I didn't sleep much. The river was quiet, but the quiet had weight. You can tell when people are planning something. The stillness changes. It's not peace. It's the kind of silence that comes right before a storm. The next morning, I walked out with my coffee and saw the chain still locked, the post still in place. For a second, I almost believed maybe they'd given up, but I should have known better. People like Karen don't give up. They just wait until you look the other way. 2 mornings later, the letter came. White envelope, HOA letterhead. I didn't even have to open it to know what it said. You can smell bureaucracy, the ink, the arrogance. Still, I slid it open with my pocket knife and read, Dear Mr. Redding, Evergreen Meadows Association has reviewed your obstruction of a community access structure. Your continued refusal to cooperate constitutes interference with an approved development route. You are hereby instructed to remove all physical barriers obstructing access to shared infrastructure. Failure to comply may result in legal escalation. Signed, Karen Wallace, President. I laughed out loud. Not the funny kind of laugh. The tired, hollow one that comes when you realize just how far someone's willing to stretch a lie. Shared infrastructure. That bridge wasn't theirs, wasn't county, wasn't public. It was mine, and every inch of it sat on my deed. I called my lawyer, old friend named Grace Hollander, sharp as a tack, steady as bedrock. Told her what was happening. She said, Send me everything. Photos, emails, that letter, all of it. And don't touch a thing. Not the gate, not the chain, not even the mud. So I did. Then I waited. The waiting, that's the part people don't tell you about. When you're right, you expect justice to move like lightning, but truth crawls slower than lies. 3 days later, a white SUV rolled down my drive. 2 men in hard hats stepped out, one carrying a clipboard, the other holding a roll of blueprints. The first one said, "Mornin'. We're here from Riverstone Engineering, assessing the bridge for structural viability under temporary load expansion." I blinked. Under whose authority? The man smiled like a politician. Evergreen Meadows HOA. They've approved temporary reinforcement. Behind him, I saw her, Karen Wallace, standing next to her SUV, sunglasses on, arms crossed, like a queen overseeing her peasants. "I told you," she said, "this is happening one way or another." "You're trespassing," I said. "We're protecting community interests." "You're about one sentence away from getting arrested." The engineer looked nervous. He glanced at her, then back at me. "Ma'am, maybe we should—" "Do your job," she snapped. That's when I took out my phone, started recording. "Say that again," I told her. Her lips tightened. She turned, got in her SUV, and drove off. Tires spinning gravel. The 2 men followed quickly, mumbling apologies. Grace called that night. I sent her the video. She watched it in silence, then said, "Good. Let them hang themselves with their own paperwork." By the next morning, I had another email. This one shorter, colder. "Mr. Redding, your interference with ongoing community operations will not be tolerated. Expect an inspection within 72 hours. I didn't reply. Instead, I took my coffee down to the bridge and sat on the rail. The river was slow that day, lazy, calm. Cicadas buzzed, the sunlight shimmered on the water like oil paint. But under that stillness, something was changing. There's a look to the air before a storm. The light bends different. The wind smells like metal. You can feel it in your bones when people are about to do something stupid. And standing there, staring at that bridge, I could already feel it coming. A few miles east of the river, Evergreen's construction site had turned into chaos. I didn't see it firsthand, but small towns talk, and when a project worth 6 figures starts to choke, everyone hears the gossip. The clubhouse expansion was behind schedule. The concrete foundation was half poured, rain had delayed delivery twice, and the contractor had just filed a notice. If material didn't arrive by Friday, Evergreen would owe a $10,000 per day penalty for breach of contract. And guess who signed that contract personally? Karen Wallace. You could almost picture her standing in that HOA office, tapping her manicured nails against the desk, watching the numbers climb red on the spreadsheet. Every minute she wasn't fixing the problem. The association bled money. So she made a decision. Not a smart one, not a legal one, but one that made sense to people who think charm can outmuscle gravity. She told her board the solution was simple. "We'll just use the farmer's bridge. It's right there. No one will notice." Someone must have asked about the 5-ton limit because she waved it off like dust. "That sign's outdated. We'll reinforce if needed. Besides, it's just a few trucks." That's how it always starts. Just a few trucks. By Thursday morning, the first delivery had already been rerouted. The county road they were supposed to use was backed up with a wreck. 2 semis tangled on the curve. Time was money, and Karen wasn't losing any more of it. She called the concrete company herself. The dispatcher later said she sounded professional, confident, like someone who had authority to authorize anything. She told them she had written permission from the landowner. She didn't. She told them the bridge was county maintained. It wasn't. And when the driver hesitated, she promised him a cash bonus if he could make the delivery before noon. Money makes people forget warnings. Back on my side of the river, I didn't know any of that yet. All I knew was the air felt heavy that morning, the kind of weight that hangs low before trouble. The cicadas had gone quiet, and even the river seemed to move slower. At around 10 a.m., I heard distant engines. Not farm trucks, not pickups. Deeper, heavier. I stepped out onto the porch and saw dust rising past the tree line on the far bank. Construction vehicles, at least 2. Then the flash of white, Evergreen's logo. I knew exactly what was happening. I grabbed my phone, hit record, and started walking down the path to the bridge. Halfway there, I could see movement. A man in a safety vest waving toward the driver, signaling him forward. And standing beside him, arms folded, was Karen Wallace herself. Even from a distance, you could feel her impatience. Every second the truck waited was another dollar burning. She shouted something I couldn't make out over the roar of the diesel engine, then pointed toward the bridge like a queen commanding her army. The driver hesitated, looked back at her. I saw him shake his head. She stepped closer, jabbing a finger at the sign, probably spinning another lie. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw her lips move. It's fine. I've got approval. That was the moment she crossed the line. Not just the physical one, but the moral one too. Because once she said that, once that truck started rolling, there was no stopping what came next. The bridge was never designed for that much weight. It had a working limit, yes. 5 tons, maybe 6 if you counted the reinforcement I'd done last winter. But a cement truck? That's 30 tons of pressure on wood and steel meant for half that. Later, the county investigator told me the driver was shaking his head the whole way across. He knew it wasn't safe, but she'd told him, if you don't drive, we cancel the job. He had a family, 2 kids, and rent due on Monday, so he drove. And that's how desperation, money, and pride teamed up to do something truly stupid. From my porch, I saw the truck's cab hit the midpoint of the bridge. I heard the groan, a sound I'll never forget. And before I could even yell, the bridge started to bow. There's a moment right before disaster, a strange kind of stillness, like the world inhales and holds its breath. That's what I felt standing at the edge of my property, watching 30 tons of bad decision roll onto my bridge. The truck eased forward, slow at first, the front tires thudding over the planks, the beams flexed. I could see it, even from here, a dip where there shouldn't be one. The driver's hands gripped the wheel white-knuckled. His window was cracked open, and I swear I could hear him praying under his breath. Karen stood off to the side, cell phone in hand, recording it all. She looked proud, like she'd just proven me wrong. The same look people wear a half second before gravity corrects them. Then came that sound, a deep metallic moan that turned my stomach cold. Every builder knows it. It's the sound of a structure begging for mercy. "Stop!" I yelled across the water. But my voice was swallowed by the diesel roar. The truck's back wheels hit the midpoint. The bridge dipped another inch, then 2. A bolt shot loose like a bullet, whizzing into the river with a faint splash. The driver slammed the brakes. Too late. The middle span sagged, twisted, and gave out. It didn't explode or crumble. It folded. One end dropped, dragging the truck sideways. The whole machine lurched, the drum still spinning as it slid. The sound was deafening. Cracking timbers, screaming metal, the roar of 30 tons hitting water. The truck tilted, then rolled onto its side, sending up a wave that drenched the riverbank. Karen screamed, high and sharp. The driver's door was already underwater. For one sick heartbeat, I thought he'd gone under for good. Then I saw movement. The passenger window shattered, and a man's arm clawed out. He kicked, scrambled, gasping as the cab filled. I ran, down the hill, across the mud, my boots slipping on the wet clay. The smell of fuel hit me before I reached the water. "Hang on!" I yelled. He caught the railing, or what was left of it, and I grabbed his jacket, pulling with everything I had. When we finally hit the bank, both of us just lay there, coughing river water and concrete dust. He looked up at me, eyes wild. "She said it was safe," he gasped. "She said you approved it." I didn't answer. There was nothing to say. Behind us, the truck was half submerged, tilted at a cruel angle, the drum still spinning slow, pumping gray cement into the current. Karen stood frozen at the far end of the bridge, one hand over her mouth, the other clutching her phone like it might save her. When she saw me staring, she turned and ran back toward her SUV. The river carried the rest away, the pieces of decking, a few boards, a floating sign that still read 5-ton limit before it sank under the surface. By the time the sheriff arrived, the whole scene looked like a photograph of arrogance. The driver sat wrapped in a blanket, shivering, answering questions. Karen hovered behind the deputies, crying and insisting it wasn't her fault. "It was supposed to hold," she said. "He must have taken the wrong turn." But the officer, a young deputy named Carter, looked at the wreckage, then at me. "Sir," he said quietly, "that sign was clear as day. Anyone could see it." "They didn't want to," I said. I showed him the video, every second from the moment the truck approached. Karen's voice, the lies she told, the gesture she made pushing the driver forward. He watched it twice. Then he radioed his supervisor. When he turned back, his tone had changed. We'll need to file this as criminal negligence, possibly reckless endangerment. The county'll want statements." The driver nodded weakly. "She made me do it," he said again, voice breaking. "She said if I didn't, I'd lose the job." Karen shouted something, maybe denial, maybe panic, but I didn't hear her. I was watching the water, watching the current pull away the last broken plank of the bridge I'd built with my own hands. It's strange, the human instinct after loss. Some folks cry, some rage. Me? I just felt tired, like the river had taken more than steel that day. It had taken my patience too. That night, long after the deputies left, I sat on my porch, coffee cold in my hand. Across the dark water, flashing lights still painted the trees red and blue. The air smelled of fuel and wet cedar. I thought about the bridge, about all the mornings I'd crossed it, all the nights I'd heard it creak under the weight of something honest. And I thought about Karen Wallace, somewhere on the other side, dialing lawyers and spinning stories, already preparing her version of the truth. But bridges don't lie, they only break once. The next morning, the river was still gray with concrete, chunks of rebar poked through the water like bones. The county had cordoned off both sides with yellow tape, though it didn't stop the gawkers. Pickup trucks lined the road on the far bank. Neighbors stood around in folding chairs, sipping coffee, shaking their heads. Somebody even brought donuts. Small towns treat disaster the same way they treat parades. Everyone shows up, everyone speculates. Karen Wallace wasn't at the site that morning. Word was she'd left in the middle of the night, after deputies confiscated her phone and took her statement. But her damage was everywhere. The sheriff's office brought in a crane crew to start pulling pieces from the current. It took them 4 hours just to secure the truck. The drum had split open, and a thick gray sludge spread downstream like cement blood. Fish were floating belly up by noon. I stayed quiet, stood off to the side while the foreman gave his report. A few reporters showed up too, local news vans, one from Channel 4 out of Fort Worth. They took photos of the twisted beams, the bent sign, the truck half buried in mud. A young reporter with too much hair gel walked up to me, microphone in hand. "Mr. Redding, can you tell us what happened here?" I looked past him, out toward the water. "What happened," I said slowly, "is that people who don't listen to warnings learn the hard way." He blinked. "Are you suggesting the HOA is responsible?" "I'm not suggesting anything," I said. "I've got video." He hesitated, then lowered his mic. "We'd like to see it." "You'll see it," I said. "So will the county and the court." Behind him, a few HOA board members had shown up, not to help, just to whisper and point. They kept their distance, pretending they didn't know the woman who started all this. One of them, a tall man in a golf shirt, muttered to another, "Insurance better cover this." And I thought, there it is. That's what it all boils down to with people like them. Not truth, not accountability, just who's paying the bill. That afternoon, I met with Sheriff Carter in his office. He had the file open, pages scattered, photos, timestamps, witness notes. He rubbed his eyes, looked like he hadn't slept. "We've got your footage, your emails, your letter, and the driver's statement," he said. "Karen Wallace told the contractor she had your permission. Flat out lied." "I figured," I said. "She's claiming it was a misunderstanding." I snorted. "You don't misunderstand a 5-ton sign in 4-inch letters." He smiled faintly. "That's what I said." He flipped through the paperwork. "County's labeling this as a civil engineering failure caused by unauthorized load stress. But once we prove intent, it turns criminal. Negligent endangerment, false representation, and property destruction." "What about the driver?" I asked. "He's off the hook. We've got audio from the dispatcher. She told him she'd worked it out with you. He'll testify." I nodded. The weight in my chest loosened just a little. Justice doesn't move fast, but when it starts rolling, it's hard to stop. By the end of that week, the video hit the news. They ran it on every local station. Karen's voice, her gestures, her lies. Slow-motion replays of the bridge giving way, the truck falling, the river swallowing it whole. Public opinion turned overnight. The HOA board held an emergency meeting. Half the members resigned by morning. The rest went silent. But silence doesn't fix anything. The bridge was still gone. The river didn't care who was sorry. That night, I stood at the edge of the bank where the planks used to start. The water reflected the moonlight, soft, rippling, indifferent, and for the first time in years, I didn't hear the creak of wood or the echo of my own boots crossing, just the steady whisper of the current, like the river was saying, "I warned you too." Grace showed up 2 days later in that same old Buick she's driven since the Clinton administration. When she got out, she didn't say hello. She just stood there for a second, taking in the wreckage across the river, the twisted steel, the gray streaks of cement still clinging to the rocks, the smell of diesel hanging in the air. "Well," she said finally, "they've done it now." That's Grace. No small talk, no sympathy, just straight to the marrow of the problem. We set up shop in my kitchen. She spread folders across the table, printouts, copies of HOA filings, even a binder marked Evergreen Project accounts. I don't know how she got half of it, and I didn't ask. "This isn't just negligence," she said. "This is organized stupidity." I poured her a cup of coffee. "Tell me something new." She flipped through a stack of documents. The HOA filed a permit with the county 3 weeks ago. They claim they were authorized to use a shared private access bridge for construction logistics. They even attached a letter with your signature. I froze. My signature? A good fake, but still a fake. I had it run through a verification program. Different stroke pressure, off-center alignment. Someone traced your name off an old maintenance form. I clenched my jaw. Karen Wallace. Most likely, and she wasn't alone. Grace tapped another paper. The board co-signed. 2 members plus a notary, all complicit. That's conspiracy if the DA's got the backbone to call it that. She leaned back, lacing her fingers. And there's more. The HOA transferred $25,000 from the general fund into an infrastructure emergency reserve. Guess where that went? Cypress Builders, I guessed. Close. Riverstone Engineering. Same shell company they hired for your inspection. The address on the invoice? A P.O. box registered to Karen's husband. That one hit hard, even for me. They hadn't just been reckless. They'd built a paper fortress to hide behind. But Grace wasn't impressed. She'd seen worse. "We'll need statements," she said. "The driver's already cooperating. I'll subpoena the dispatch logs, the HOA emails, and their insurance filings. If they try to bury this, we'll dig them out." "And the bridge?" I asked. "You'll get compensated. County will pay for the environmental cleanup. HOA will cover the rebuild. And Karen..." She paused, then smiled that sharp, cat-like grin I'd seen in court once. "Karen's going to lose everything she built on lies." 3 days later, Grace filed a civil claim and criminal complaint. The county clerk almost choked reading the evidence list. 47 exhibits, 3 affidavits, and a notarized video of Karen waving the truck forward. She'd walked herself right into a courtroom trap. The news picked it up immediately. Local headlines: HOA under fire after bridge collapse. President accused of forging landowner's signature. By evening, Grace's phone was ringing nonstop. Reporters, county attorneys, even a few HOA members desperate to distance themselves. One left a voicemail practically crying, "We didn't know she forged anything. Please don't lump us in." Grace saved every message. She doesn't waste good evidence. That Friday, I got a visit from the truck driver, Tom Watkins. He showed up holding a grocery bag. Inside was a 6-pack and a folded envelope. "For the damage," he said quietly. "You don't owe me a dime," I told him. "Yeah, well," he said, "I owe you honesty. She told me you approved it. Said you'd emailed the HOA confirming access. I believed her. Shouldn't have." He looked down at the river, eyes red. "My wife still can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see it folding." I put a hand on his shoulder. "You made it out alive. That's what matters." He nodded, but I could see it. The guilt carved into his face. Some scars don't show up on skin. Grace called that night. "County's moving faster than I thought. They're opening a grand jury inquiry into Evergreen's leadership. Looks like your little bridge just turned into a big legal earthquake." I didn't laugh, but I did feel something close to relief. Not joy, not satisfaction, just the quiet weight of right finally catching up to wrong. "You think they'll actually charge her?" "If the DA doesn't," Grace said, "I will drag this case into federal court myself." There was a pause. Then she added, "You ever notice how people like her always think they're untouchable until something breaks under their feet?" I looked out at the river, the moonlight cutting a silver line across the surface. "Yeah," I said, "and this time, it was steel that did the talking. Courtrooms aren't built for emotion. They're built for paperwork. beige walls, buzzing lights, and air so still it feels like the truth itself gets filtered through bureaucracy. But that morning, the air in Judge Merriweather's courtroom felt heavier than most. Maybe it was the cameras. Maybe it was Karen Wallace sitting 3 tables away, staring holes through me. Grace sat to my left, calm as stone. She'd been here before. Decades of land disputes, zoning fights, and corporate cover-ups had made her immune to theatrics. All that mattered now was evidence, and we had plenty. When the bailiff called the session to order, the room went quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. The judge adjusted her glasses. Case 42 CV 912, Reading versus Evergreen Meadows Homeowners Association. Counsel, proceed. Grace stood, walked to the podium, and began the way only she could. Slow, deliberate, every word landing like a nail driven straight. Your Honor, this case isn't about community planning or neighborhood access. It's about deception, plain and simple. The defendant, Ms. Karen Wallace, knowingly falsified authorization to use my client's private bridge for commercial transport, resulting in the collapse of that structure and endangerment of human life. She paused just long enough for the silence to settle. We have video footage, forged documents, and sworn testimony confirming that this was not an accident. It was arrogance, disguised as leadership. Across the room, Karen shifted in her chair. Her lawyer, some sleek man from Dallas, leaned in and whispered something, but she ignored him. Grace nodded to the bailiff, who cued the footage. The video played on a big monitor, me shouting from the bank, the truck inching forward, Karen waving her arm, yelling, "Go ahead!" Then the crack, the collapse, the splash. You could hear gasps from the gallery. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Grace let the video run in silence for a moment longer before saying, "No further commentary needed, Your Honor. The evidence speaks for itself." When it was the defense's turn, Karen's lawyer tried everything, claimed the driver misinterpreted her signal, that she believed the bridge was county-maintained, that she had no intent to deceive. But every time he spoke, Grace countered with something colder, sharper, more precise. "Intent is not required when recklessness becomes predictable," she said. She forged a signature. She redirected funds. She ignored multiple written warnings. That's not ignorance. That's willful misconduct. Karen finally snapped halfway through. She slammed her hand on the table, voice rising. "You don't understand. We were under deadline. I was trying to save this community." The judge's gavel hit hard. "Ms. Wallace, sit down." Grace didn't flinch. She just turned slightly toward Karen. "Save it from what? Accountability?" The courtroom murmured. Even the clerk hid a smirk. After closing arguments, Judge Merriweather called a recess. We waited, 30 long minutes in the hallway. Karen sat with her lawyer, pacing, whispering, eyes darting toward the cameras outside. I sat by the window, watching a storm roll in over the courthouse square, thunder in the distance. Appropriate. When we were called back, the judge didn't waste time. "The evidence presented leaves little room for doubt," she began. "The defendant, Ms. Wallace, acted beyond her authority as HOA president, falsified documentation, and endangered both private property and human life. The court hereby orders the following." She read it slow, deliberate, like she wanted each word to land. "The Evergreen Meadows HOA is to pay full restitution for environmental cleanup and reconstruction of the plaintiff's bridge, including labor, materials, and associated losses. Ms. Wallace is personally liable for damages caused by fraudulent representation and is hereby barred from holding any fiduciary or administrative role in community governance for a period of 10 years. The forged signature and falsified authorization are referred to the district attorney's office for criminal review." Then she looked directly at Karen. "Ma'am, you were entrusted with leadership. You abused it. This court does not tolerate arrogance disguised as service." And with one strike of the gavel, it was over. Outside, the rain had started. Reporters swarmed, microphones flashing. I didn't stop for interviews. I just walked out under the awning, breathed in the smell of wet asphalt and freedom. Grace joined me, lighting a cigarette, something she only did after a win. "You know," she said, "she'll probably try to appeal. People like that don't vanish quietly." "That's fine," I said. "Bridges can be rebuilt, reputations can't." She smiled, smoke curling through the rain. "You've got a way with words, Redding." "Years of dealing with HOA letters," I said. We both laughed, soft and tired. Across the parking lot, Karen climbed into her car, face pale, motion jerky, the kind of movement people make when their pride has no place left to go. For a moment, our eyes met through the rain-spotted glass. No hate, no anger, just the quiet understanding that the river doesn't pick sides. It just takes what it's given. News travels fast when pride hits the ground. By sunrise the next day, every local station from Fort Worth to Dallas had run the story. HOA president found liable in bridge collapse. The photo they used showed Karen stepping out of the courthouse, hair plastered by rain, eyes hidden behind those same sunglasses she wore the day she waved that truck forward. The clip went viral. Talk radio had a field day. Callers took sides, half laughing, half furious. Another HOA thinking they're above the law. Serves her right. Maybe next time they'll read the damn sign. Even the county paper ran an editorial titled, "The Bridge That Broke the HOA." I didn't read the whole thing, but Grace called it surprisingly poetic. Evergreen Meadows went into full panic mode. The board held 3 emergency meetings in 1 week, 2 in person, 1 on Zoom, but nothing could fix it. Their insurance company froze their account pending investigation. Members started demanding refunds for their dues. One man even stood up during the meeting and yelled, "We paid for flowers, not lawsuits." Within a month, half the homeowners filed a petition to dissolve the HOA entirely. By the second month, they succeeded. Evergreen Meadows Homeowners Association, once proud, polished, and perfectly trimmed, was gone. Just like my bridge, it had collapsed under its own weight. As for Karen Wallace, she tried to appeal. She tried to talk her way out of the criminal charges too, claiming stress, miscommunication, even a setup. Didn't work. The district attorney charged her with forgery, falsification of public records, and reckless endangerment. She pled no contest to 2 of them, probably hoping for leniency. The judge gave her 18 months probation and barred her from holding any administrative title for 10 years. Word is, she moved out of Evergreen soon after, sold her house at a loss, and left in the middle of the night. Some say she's living with family down in Galveston now, starting fresh. Maybe so, but it's hard to start fresh when your name's still trending under HOA Gate. The county sent a restoration crew to my property 3 weeks after the ruling. They cleaned up the debris, hauled out the wreckage, and filed a report that said simply, "Structural failure due to unauthorized overweight load." That's lawyer speak for you were right. Grace negotiated the settlement, fair, not greedy. Enough to rebuild, reinforce, and cover every dollar I'd lost since the collapse. She even made sure the new bridge design was county certified, paid in full by Evergreen's dissolved asset fund. I didn't ask for the name change, but when they filed the new signage, it came through with a new title, Reading Crossing. I have to admit, it looks good on a map. One afternoon, a reporter from Channel 4 came back for a follow-up interview. He asked if I felt vindicated. I told him no. "Vindicated's for people who enjoy being right," I said. "I'd rather the bridge still be standing." He nodded, scribbled something in his notebook, then asked, "What would you say to your homeowners associations across the state?" I smiled, small, dry. "Same thing I told her," I said. "Respect the sign." He laughed, thought it was a joke, but I wasn't joking. That night, after the crews packed up, I sat out by the river again. The new bridge gleamed in the dusk, steel, concrete, stronger than before. The sound of the current was steady again, not angry, not sad, just moving on. That's what rivers do. They erase, they renew, they remember nothing. I wish people could do the same. By late spring, the riverbank no longer smelled like cement or diesel. Grass had started to grow again where the cranes tore up the soil. The sound of machinery was gone, replaced by the low hum of bees and the rustle of water against rock. It took 3 months to rebuild the bridge, longer than expected, but we did it right this time. County-grade steel, double reinforced pilings, concrete decking with weather sealant, no shortcuts, no handshakes behind closed doors. Every weld was checked twice, every beam stamped and logged. The foreman, a soft-spoken man named Danny Rhodes, told me, "This bridge will outlive both of us." I smiled. That's all I ever wanted. The day they poured the final layer, I stood by the bank, hands in my pockets, watching the concrete truck back up carefully, slower, quieter than the one that sank here last year. The driver looked nervous, even though this time he was authorized. "Don't worry," I told him. "This one can handle it." He laughed, but I didn't. The river has a long memory. A few weeks later, the county crew installed the new sign at the entrance. It wasn't fancy, just black letters on white steel, clean and sharp. Reading Crossing, load limit 10 tons. 10 tons felt right, not too weak, not too proud, strong enough to bear the weight of what came before, but humble enough to remind you that everything has limits. I invited a few neighbors over the following weekend. Old friends, the mailman, even the bus driver who used to turn around at the dead end before the bridge collapsed. We set up a few tables, grilled some ribs, and raised a toast. Not to victory, but to survival. Grace showed up too, still driving that same old Buick. She handed me a bottle of whiskey and a folded envelope. "Settlement check," she said. "I already got the transfer," I replied. "You didn't have to drive out here," she grinned. "Oh, I didn't come for the money. I came to see if you finally smiled. Did I?" "Almost." She stayed for dinner, sitting on the porch steps while the sun went down over the water. It was one of those evenings where time slowed down, laughter in the air, the smell of grilled corn, the bridge catching the light like brushed gold. For the first time in a long while, the river sounded peaceful again. Later that night, after everyone left, I walked out onto the bridge alone. The planks still smelled like new wood and rain. A pair of herons stood in the shallows below, still as statues. I leaned against the railing and listened, to the quiet, to the water, to the heartbeat of something finally set right. The past year had left scars. The river still held pieces of the old bridge somewhere under the current, maybe a bolt or two, maybe part of the railing. But that's all right. Every place needs a memory, something to remind it what it survived. I thought about naming it something poetic, Patience Crossing, or The Wallace Lesson. But no, it didn't need a clever name. It just needed to stand. When the moon came up, its reflection cut a silver path right across the surface, straight, calm, unbroken. For the first time, I didn't feel the weight of what happened, only gratitude, that the land had forgiven us, that the river had quieted, and that the bridge, finally, had earned its peace. I still sit by the river most mornings, same chair, same coffee cup, same quiet stretch of water that's seen everything. From the first nail I drove into that bridge to the day it all came crashing down. People think justice feels like fireworks, loud, triumphant, final. It doesn't. It feels like this, the steady rush of water, a soft wind, and the knowledge that the truth took its time. But it got here. The new bridge stands proud now. The county calls it Reading Crossing, but to me, it's just the bridge. It's not about the name. It's about what it means. Boundaries respected, lessons learned, peace earned the hard way. Sometimes, when I walk across it, I stop right in the middle, the same spot where the old one folded. You can still see a few bits of rusted metal buried under the riverbed when the water's low. I leave them there, a reminder. You don't erase history. You let it sit where it fell so the next fool can see what happens when arrogance meets gravity. Folks from town still drive by to look at it. Some slow down, roll down their windows, wave. Others just nod, that quiet country nod that means good job, neighbor. Even the county engineer stopped once, said he'd never seen a private citizen keep better records than I did. Guess that's what happens when you've been burned by bureaucracy. You start keeping receipts. Grace calls every now and then. She doesn't talk about the case anymore. Mostly we talk about the weather, or her garden, or some new lawsuit she's tearing through in Dallas. Last week she said, "You ever think about joining politics, Reading?" I laughed. "No, ma'am. I already dealt with one HOA. That's enough government for a lifetime." She laughed too, that dry, throaty kind of laugh you get from too much coffee and not enough faith in people. Some nights, when the wind's just right, I swear I can still hear the creak of the old bridge in my head. That low groan of timber giving way, that final warning no one listened to. But it doesn't make me angry anymore. It just reminds me that every man's patience has a limit, and sometimes that limit is 5 tons. People like Karen Wallace, they come and go. The world's full of folks who think paperwork can rewrite ownership, or that confidence is stronger than common sense. But the river doesn't care about confidence. It doesn't care about titles, or meetings, or fines. It just takes what's heavy and carries it away. This morning the water's running clear again. A pair of ducks glided under the bridge at sunrise. The sky turned that soft orange that only lasts a minute or two, and for a brief second, everything felt quiet, balanced. I leaned back, sipped my coffee, and smiled a little. Not because I won, because I endured. And maybe that's the real difference between people like me and people like her. They build for power. I build for permanence. So when folks ask me what I'd say to anyone who crosses a line that isn't theirs, I tell them what the river taught me. You can ignore the sign, but you can't ignore the consequence. Then I watch the water roll past, carrying pieces of old mistakes toward the sea, and I think that's how life works too. You can't stop the current. You can only build your bridge and hope it holds.